Hello and welcome to the Doctor's Inn. I am Dr. Franklin Cobos, and today I have a special guest with me, my good friend Dr. James Appel, with whom I graduated from medical school in the year 2000, Loma Linda University. And
good year to graduate in.
It was.
Easy to remember.
Yeah, Y2K. I mean, how could you forget Y2K? But since then, you spent a lot of time after residency in a place called Chad.
Yes, and you've been there a few times yourself.
I have. It's been a couple of trips out there, and it's good to have you back stateside. And you've been out in a place called Abu Ghudam.
Yes.
Recently, which you kind of introduced me to, actually. But we should kind of go back in time and think about the story, the origin of how we both came to come to this place that's not
in the middle of nowhere.
It's not on some maps.
No,
actually.
Google Earth doesn't even get it right. I mean, it's there, but it's misnamed.
So why should we even go? Why would we go there as physicians to the middle of a Christian physicians going to a Muslim enclave by invitation, wasn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't really supposed to happen. It was back in 2009, and I've been in Chad for 5 years, and one of our board members in Chad, a man named Jimajiba Ame, or Ame for short.
Ame for short. Short's good.
Who was a judge and a constitutional advisor to the president. I came back from vacation one time. I was in N'Djamena, and he said, "James, one of my colleagues would like to meet you," because he says, "I've heard what you Adventists are doing in Bere, where we had the hospital, and could you come to our part of the country, because we don't have any hospital there." And I was not looking for any new projects at the time at all. I had plenty to do.
You've been busy for years.
The only doctor in a small district hospital, and but I wanted to see more of Chad, and I thought this was a great opportunity. And so many people had asked me over the years to start something in their little village, and never had any follow-up, that I didn't feel in any danger of actually having to do anything.
to follow through on the commitment.
Yeah, and so he took us out there, and he had a couple of vehicles, and Ame went, and I went, and Mama Saleh Abakar, who was Ame's colleague, and his brother, Muhammad Hassan Abakar, and another younger brother, and a couple of drivers, and then our chaplain from the hospital. So we had kind of this team of about 8 or 9 people.
To evaluate the offer, really, basically.
For me, it was a tourist trip.
Okay.
And we spent 2 days going out, and had some great conversations. And when you're on the road, nothing else to do, you get to know people in your small car.
Road trip is a great way to get to know people.
And so I felt like after those 2 days, I felt like I knew Muhammad Saleh Abakar. And
to again clarify, he was the man who invited you through a common friend, Ame.
Exactly. So he was the colleague of Ame, another constitutional advisor to the president, had his office next to Ame, and
so certain people. He was the origin of the invitation.
Yes, he's the one who invited us, and he's certain people you just connect with right off the bat. He was one of those people for me, and so we went out there, and he took us out the next day to his little village where he was born. We'd gone to the big town of Abéché, which is Chad's 4th largest city near the Sudanese border, which is the center of all the kind of efforts for Darfur.
That used to be just not far from Abéché.
No, it's just across the border, about 100 kilometers from Abéché.
60 miles.
And so we went out to his village, and it was just nothing. Chad in general is flat. This is the region's called the Sahel. It's desert, but there were some mountains here, so there's a little bit of topography. But the place he took us was kind of in a low spot, and I thought, man, with all these mountains, there should be a view around here. So I said, hey, if we're going to build a clinic, let's have a view. So I said, is there anywhere else you can show us? And so one of the members of the party said, yeah, I know a place, let's go. So he took us to the village of Argudi, which is just right next to Abu Ghudam, which is about 20 kilometers from Abéché. And there was this nice raised area with a big pile of rocks on it, and it just descended down into this wadi, and it had a view spreading out of all the surrounding mountains.
Dried riverbed, wadi, which I think Arabic for river. Or
I think it's English
river.
too.
I think it's what you wear when you go into the river.
And so then we came back, and I kind of forgot about it, because it was a nice time. But a month later, I get a call from Ame, and he says, Muhammad Saleh Abakar just gave me the papers for the land. And so now I knew.
Now suddenly you've got work to do.
Yeah, I knew I had a commitment now, But I didn't have any money, and I didn't try and raise any money. I just figured if God wants something to be done, let him take care of it.
I'm busy.
So that's, I think, how you came into the picture, because...
I'm afraid so.
you came back to Chad. You've been there once before, and you came back a second time.
I dared to go again.
And then, when was it that you introduced me to this?
So we had talked
CalEarth?
a bit about building some private rooms for people who could pay more to have private quarters during their hospitalization. And up until that time, all the hospitals I had visited in Africa had been Western-style facilities that weren't really conducive to healthcare. The main part was that they were energy intensive because you had to cool them, and patients would tend to abandon the beds when we would round on them. Where's so-and-so? And they weren't even there because it was too hot. And my best friend from medical school, Dr. Stephen Garrett, had introduced me to this website, CalEarth.org, because he and I had an interest in low-cost housing. And while we had looked at geodesic for a while, he was very enthusiastic about this place. He said, you got to check this out. We got to build a place like this in Mexico for a clinic. And so I looked at it, and it struck me the second time I came back to Chad that it would be perfect for the desert environment of Chad. It would be affordable. It could be done with local materials, local labor. It didn't require advanced construction knowledge or experience. And it seemed like it was something that would fit well culturally because it had this kind of Middle Eastern appearance, because it's a dome, beehive-shaped type of construction.
There's actually parts of Chad where I've seen similar kind of beehive-shaped structures, and they tell me that in those parts they used to build like that. So it's not completely a foreign.
It wasn't. It was old.
Yeah.
It wasn't foreign. It was simply old and maybe
kind of
forgotten or abandoned.
And thought of as pre-modern, I think.
And not as good.
Left behind with the advancing technology of tin roofs.
Yeah.
Creating ovens.
The one-day ovens. Yes. So when I heard you talk about that project, I think I remember you saying, Frank, why, you go out and you start that hospital because I don't have time. I'm too busy here. I'm starting.
I still don't remember. I don't remember.
Oh, I do because I was like, are you kidding me?
All I remember is getting an email from you when you went back to the States saying, James, there's a seminar at CalEarth, a week-long training session. We need to go to it, and you somehow convinced me
to do that.
To do it.
Yeah.
So you were there in 2009, and in 2010, April is when we went and did that training.
Right. So I got us registered, and we went to that course for 1 week, and learned in that 1 week all the basics of how to build these type of structures.
I don't know about you, but I didn't really feel like I was ready to do something.
Well, no, I don't think I was ready either, because that's why I had asked Human Faisley, who was one of the lead instructors there, to then come with me and meet you in Chad, and to
because we were even though we weren't prepared and weren't pretending like this was a project, we were bragging at CalEarth that we were going to make a new hospital in Eckerdale Hospital.
We did. We stated our solid intent and desire with conviction, and we shocked and stunned them that, wow, these two physicians have left their work to come study with us in the middle of the California desert, and now they want to go build a hospital. So
I still think they probably didn't think much of it. I think most people go to CalEarth don't actually end up building anything.
Statistically, that's true. Human told me that.
Yeah.
Probably 1 out of 10 maybe will actually do something with what they learn. And so he knew that, of course, and he said, look, if you guys will build a small dome, do a prototype out there and prove that the technology will work there, the design, and that you're committed and capable of getting this going, then I will come out and I will help you add on and expand your footprint for the project you want to do there, which we decided early on was going to be very unique and different in philosophy and physically different than all the other clinics that we had as mission doctors had ever seen or worked at.
See, this is all great background because I didn't know all these things. I thought Human came in much later in 2013. But this was something that you were setting up with him
from the beginning. From the beginning, yeah. And he just cut the conversation short. He says, "Look, I'm not going to come out."
And don't forget Arlo, who joined us today.
We can't forget Arlo.
Yeah,
our good friend.
So Arlo was someone who had showed up in Chad a couple of years before as a volunteer with some other organization. I don't even know what.
Well, it wasn't Adventist Health Organization.
But his mother knew my aunt, who when she told my aunt, my son is going to Chad. She said, oh, my nephew is in Chad. And so they hooked
Maybe
us
they'll
up.
be nearby.
And we happened in the,
within an
the
hour of
third
each other?
largest country in Africa, and we happened to be 20 kilometers away from each other. So we got to know him there, and he was the kind of guy who had so, I think, gotten into the culture and everything, and when he left, said, I want to come back. And so when we thought about him as someone who might participate in this.
And so he did. He got sucked into it.
He got sucked in.
Of course, it helped that he and Human Faisley had really great mustaches, and they just
they really bonded.
They
on
did.
The
The facial hair and the waxing
of the mustache
was a ritualistic bonding and masculinity, I think, that they shared, and served our purposes, I think, and our interests.
And so then the next stage, I think, was when, right after the seminar, so we went there from just Sunday through Friday.
Then we went
to
church.
The week, and then we went to my church.
The place.
In Newberry Park, California. And the pastor there was an old friend of my brother's, and afterwards we were talking to him, and he
I left, and I shook his hand to say thanks for the message.
And when he ever sees me, he always talks about his mission project. He said, well, this time our mission project fell through. We were going to build something somewhere in Central or Latin America. And then I wasn't thinking this, but you just suddenly, without asking my permission,
hey, we've got a project for you in Africa. You want to come?
Yeah, I just remember you saying, you need to build an Equidome in Chad.
Because they were planning a construction trip, and he had construction guys. And
but
I
you know
thought
how
it was
many?
a good fit.
But again, so many people have said, "Oh yeah, I'd love to come to Chad Hotel," and they never do. So
Which
again,
they did.
I didn't think that they would actually show up, but this time they actually did show up.
What, 6 months later?
Yeah.
I think.
So it was August or September of 2010. Mm-hmm. They showed up, 5 of them, and we drove across country. And again, Imam Saleh Bakr provided us with the vehicles, with the driver. We drove out there and we stayed with the local sheikh in his village. But when we first got out there, that night, this time we did it in one day. And that night, we were in Abushe at 11 o'clock at night, and we couldn't find Imam Saleh Bakr's house. Now, I'd only been there once, so I had an excuse, but his driver couldn't even find it because they had recently paved the roads in Abushe. So everything
which is unheard of.
It was the first time roads had been paved in that city.
Period. In the history
so
of
I
the
called
city.
him, and I said, Imam Saleh, we can't find your house. And just as I said, I looked out and I saw his house. So I said, oh, okay, never mind. Thanks, we found it. I'll talk to you tomorrow. I hung up.
The next morning, something happened very significant at this
the
point.
driver woke me up, and he said, at 6 o'clock in the morning, he said, James, Muhammad Saleh is dead.
That's right. When you went to make the Protodome project a reality, the day you arrived, this man passed away.
Not only was it devastating for me because I lost a new friend, but I was also wondering, well, what's this going to mean for this project? Because it was kind of his baby. But what is this going to mean for the rest of the time? How are they going to see us? Are they just going to, But what it turned out to be actually was a bonding moment because we were able to grieve with them during this loss of their patriarch. And it kind of turned for them in kind of a way of him having a legacy. Like suddenly the whole family wanted this project to work as a remembrance of Muhammad Saleh.
Of what he wanted.
Yeah, and kind of do in remembrance of him. And so they all came rallying around and said, no, we want the project to go forward. We're behind you 100%. And they really have been the whole way. This family has continued to support us during this whole project. So we built the Protodome, and we didn't quite finish it, but we left a team there led by a guy named Naeem who had kind of joined Arlo in doing a month of preparation for the project. And we built the dome and up to almost, I think, 6 feet before the top.
It was about 3/4 done?
Yeah, maybe, at the most. 2/3, 3/4.
As you come up the walls and you have to finish the top?
And they were able to finish it on their own just with people who had been trained on site, local villagers with no kind of
previous
education
training
at all, except maybe Quranic school, and no really previous construction, which kind of proved our suspicion that this would be an easy technology to learn.
Yes.
And they did a good job. And so then it kind of just sat there for a long time.
We kind of had wondered, it's lasted in other locations, like Human had built this in a number of locations around the world in challenging environments. Perhaps not quite as challenging as Abu Dhabi with 120 degrees in the shade, if you can find it. But I had remembered that part of what I had told Human was I would be prepared to go back if the Protodome lasted and was not washed away by the next rainy season, and that it lasted sufficiently that we would believe that if we did a bigger project, it would not be just eroded through time and environmental hardship with the wind and the sun and then the torrential rains for brief periods for that one wet month. And so when a year had passed, I think you went out with the mission pilot, and some pictures were taken. And I think I had asked, is there a well there? Because I was not going to build without water right on site.
Yeah, there was a church in near my aunt, the same aunt who knew Arlo, who had this project of recycling water bottles and then using that money to build wells in third world countries. And so we've been connected to them, and they'd sent money over.
So that's how you funded the well.
So
I didn't know that
a borehole, but it was the only place they found water was way outside of the hospital property in a wadi.
Which you didn't tell me. Because I ended up walking 1.2 miles round trip to get water for mixing cement.
Okay, but we have to get, how did you end up getting
so how did I
back there?
Get there? Right. So
because we left the dome, that was in 2010.
That was in 2010.
And it wasn't until 2013
when the project actually
came back.
moved forward. Right. 13 or 12. One of the, I can't remember.
No, it was 2013.
13? All right. Well,
January 2013.
So, so I was waiting for the well to be on site and time to pass so that I could send images or pictures to Human.
As proof to Human
that hey,
done something. Yeah.
We built the prototype. Now
We've
you're
done
on
our
the
part.
hook. We've done our part. Now you got to be our lead architect as we expand this and make a real usable clinic or hospital out of it. And also during the interim, I was setting aside the money or salary that I was paid to work on Sabbath as a free will gift offering back.
Some kind of project.
Yes, to those who could not afford health care, and this population in Omogodam definitely qualified. And so I had that set aside. I had a budget that Human had confirmed based on the geometry, footprint of the design, etc.
Who designed the quad dome?
I did.
You designed that.
I did that. In fact,
Did Human contribute at all, or
no? He approved it.
He just approved it.
He said, "Show me your plan. I want to see what you got."
Okay.
And I think I may even still have the rough sketches we did in your aunt's bedroom during the nights when we'd come home from the training at CalEarth and go to bed. I had started the sketches there, and then I refined it on a graph paper that I had sent out to Human so that the dimensions would be accurate, and he could see what.
Now, how did you end up convincing him to come, or what convinced you to come back and do this?
I felt that if we didn't do it, no one else was. If we had an invitation, and I didn't know of any other invitations coming from Muslim communities for Christian physicians to come take care of it. So I thought if we didn't accept the invitation, no one else was going to do it, and who knew if we were ever going to get another opportunity like that again, where a constitutional advisor to President Idris Eby gives you land to build a hospital on? Are you kidding me? I mean, you've seen all the red tape that happens when you try to accomplish anything. And it was kind of silver platter, kind of boom, here you go. And Human simply respected his promise that we had done a program.
And I think he's kind of adventurous, and it was a challenge to him too.
He is.
Because he'd also, CalEarth I don't think has ever done any kind of healthcare thing before. It's usually mostly been dwellings and
ecotourism was kind of their niche. Yeah. And Arlo, amongst a number, really seemed to be taken. But again, these two physicians show up out of nowhere and decide they're going to build a clinic in the middle of nowhere with what they're running at CalEarth. And so that really captured their imagination and their sense of adventure and desire to see us succeed. And when they saw that seed of success in the protodome, I think Human really grabbed onto that. And so he and I came out with like 10 extra carry-ons with some supplies that we thought would help shorten the duration of time needed to succeed in the project, even though we could have purchased everything locally, like the grain bags and the barbed wire and the cement. We brought some barbed wire and some bag, most of the bag, and the rest we got.